Aloha, everyone. My name is Craig Villarrubia, and I am coming to you from the comfort of my home. And this video is being recorded for New Thought Center of Hawaii for the May 17th, Sunday, May 17th service. I'm coming to you via video because of the current COVID-19 situation that we're all dealing with on some level. And today's service is titled Forgiveness in a COVID World. And my intention today is to share and extend messages of peace based on the principles of A Course in Miracles. And if you don't know what A Course in Miracles is, it is a thick blue book. These are just pages here to mark some quotes that I'd like to share with you, but I'd also first like to share that the book is made up of 3 books. There are 3 books in one book. There is a text which lays out the theoretical foundation for the course and the course principles, and then there's a workbook which is a 365 lesson workbook, 1 lesson for each day. They are meditative lessons. The workbook provides an opportunity to apply and practice the principles taught in the text. And then there's a manual for teachers for anyone who wants to go deeper with the spiritual teaching and principles. So today I chose the title Forgiveness in a COVID World because it seems most applicable given this certain situation that we're all in. And so I hope to share some of the things that I personally have been dealing with in this experience and how the application of course principles have helped me and continue to help me stay or remain or remember a state of peace of mind that is really our gift from our Creator. So the aim of the course is to deliver on an experience of peace. And I've been with the course for probably about 20 years now, and I've been with the course this long because the course has shown me that through the application of these course principles, peace is the result. And the central teaching of A Course in Miracles, although A Course in Miracles says a lot of things in the many pages that it has, really the essence of the heart of the course is forgiveness. It presents forgiveness as a tool to undo the suffering that we experience. The Course says that the suffering that we experience is based upon a misperception of who we are. We tend to see ourselves as a vulnerable body in a world, a scary world, as evidenced in this current situation with COVID-19. But the Course says we experience this world as a scary experience, and we oftentimes feel victim to the world because we've mistaken ourselves to be something we're not. And we've forgotten our true identity as extensions of our Creator. And as extensions of our Creator, we share in our Creator's attributes, which are attributes of goodness, wholeness, eternity, all-powerfulness, and many, many, many others. And so what we are aiming to do as we apply course principles, or as I share this message, our aim really is to remember the truth of who we are beyond the physical body we perceive ourselves to be. And as we become more and more convicted in the truth of who we are less and less to the point we are no longer at the effect of what we see in the world. So what we are aiming to do as we practice these principles is really undo the psychological suffering that occurs in our experience. And all suffering has a psychological base, or the basis of all suffering is psychological. And that's what we're here to unwind and undo as we apply the course principles. And so when I think about the psychological challenges or experiences that have come up, and there have been many, I've pretty much nailed it down to 4 things that I've experienced that I'm going to talk about today that I believe on some level you may also be experiencing. And so hopefully I can share something that'll bring insight and shine light on the dysfunction of the thinking so that we can transcend it and forgive it, as A Course in Miracles would say. And the easiest way to define forgiveness, although there are different seeming definitions of what forgiveness is, I like to stick to a very simple one in the Course that says forgiveness is simply to overlook. That's it, is to overlook. So when I think about some of the things that have come up for many people, the first thing I want to talk about is this idea that many of us can't do what we're used to doing, or we can't work as we used to work. So I want to talk about wasting time, because this has been something that's come up for me, and I know for many people that who are not working, they are living with this idea of, oh my god, I'm wasting time. Through this COVID-19 experience, I'm not doing, I'm not as productive as I should be. And so you might find yourself in a situation where I know for me, I've always thought I didn't have enough time to do all these projects that I've wanted to do. I wanted to, do this in the workshop, clean the house, organize my computer, and here I have all this time and I didn't get any of that done. So I feel like I wasted time. So wasted time has come up a lot in this COVID-19 experience. There's a sense of not being productive and not being productive enough and feeling guilt. Now, guilt is the number one peace disturbance. It is arguably the only peace disturbance, guilt. And this idea of wasted time is basically an ego thought. It is the thought of what we've perceived or misperceived ourselves to be, this person who has to basically earn his or her worthiness. And this thought of not feeling worthy is really what's coming up when we have these ideas that we've wasted time. Because basically, the feeling is I'm not worthy because I'm not producing, I'm not doing enough. And all of us, whether we realize it or not, or it's obvious in some cases, or more obvious in some cases than not, or if we're not aware of it, we all carry a sense of unworthiness. It is, however small or big it may be, it's there. It is a part of believing ourselves to be separate people, separate from God. We carry this guilt and this sense of unworthiness. And one of the ways we try to make up for the unworthiness is to be productive, to be able to identify ourselves with our level of productivity. So with the COVID-19 situation, our ability to be productive in many cases has been altered. And so we have this feeling of, oh, we are not living up to the idea of who we're supposed to be. We're not living up to the idea of what we need to be producing. We're not living up to the idea of what we need to do to be worthy of what we really want, which is love. And so we feel guilt. We guilt ourselves in an attempt to feel love, which is kind of odd. It's like, let me try to feel as bad as I possibly can about the situation. Maybe if I feel bad enough about it, I can be loved. I can beat myself up enough. I can punish myself enough to make up for the fact that I'm not productive enough. So when we have thoughts of wasted time, we are seeing ourselves as unworthy. It is a misperception of who we are based upon these rules in our mind, these ideals of who or what we're supposed to be. And really, if we just look at that from a wider perspective, the truth is a lot of suffering that we experience comes from us trying to be something that we're not, trying to manage our idea of how we're supposed to be, whether it be a good person, or we need to be a nice person, or we said the right thing or said the wrong thing, or we didn't say what we should have said or done what we should have done. So this experience through COVID-19 is really opening up the ego's thought system, which is basically the thinking, the me thinking. It's opening up the ego's thought system to take advantage of this opportunity of feeling guilty. And so the Course would say that what we need to do is first acknowledge, recognize, bring awareness into the experience. Like, we don't often think about that when we have these thoughts. We think we're justified in feeling guilt because we weren't productive. But if we stop for a moment and take a look at really what is it we're saying, we have an opportunity to question the validity of these thoughts and the truth of these thoughts. And with our aim being peace, we're only interested in the truth, which, as I said before, we share in the attributes of our Creator, which means we share in the attributes of God, which is whole and complete and loved unconditionally. There is no conditions placed upon the love that we are. But for us to experience the love that we are, we have to come into a knowing. And the thought and the idea that I'm not productive enough is a thought of confusion. And so we become aware of these thoughts, and they do occur because of our conditioning, because of what the world would say about how productive we are supposed to be. We are going to have these thoughts. And it's not about necessarily changing these thoughts as much as it is about just recognizing when we do have those thoughts and having the willingness to say, oh, there's the ego's thought system playing through my mind, and its intention and only purpose is to create suffering in my experience. With that knowledge and that awareness, I'm willing to give that up. I am willing to hand that over and see things differently. And through that conscious declaration, we open ourselves up to a different way of seeing that is led not by the thoughts and the thinking, but is led through the Holy Spirit. That's led through a non-judgmental perspective. It is led through the experience of something within us that is far greater and vast than the simple idea of productivity, or the measurable idea of productivity, and the silliness of it. So wasted time is nothing but a question of worthiness. Your worth cannot be established by you. It is only established by God and by your Creator. And your worth has already been established. The other thing that has come up through this COVID-19, if you're on social media, this may have presented itself to you, but there's a lot of information, a lot of opposing information on social media channels. I know I was recently scrolling through something not too long ago, and I started to feel disturbance. I would call it conspiracy theories out there. And this isn't a message of for or against conspiracy theories, but I can say that in looking at my social media, I was charged with certain conspiracy theories that I immediately wanted to react to and respond and give my opinion. Now, our aim is peace, but in this situation, it brings up a lot of fear in people. And the fear gets expressed in many different ways. And certainly there is a culture within the news world that profits on confusion and fear. And this isn't trying to make news or social media bad. It isn't. However, when we buy into what's being said, we find ourselves at the experience of suffering and confusion, and in many cases, division. And so I remember reading some post and being very heavily charged, and I was reminded by another course principle, and it is in regards to the battlefield. So here's the deal: is the world, the course would say, is created to sow confusion. It is the world is created to create an experience that is separate from God, and there are going to be a lot of dualistic, opposing views. But if we want peace of mind, we have to stay out of the battlefield. There's always a temptation when we run into people who think differently than us to want to defend our position. To defend our position. And the Course in Miracles would say that defense is a two-way sword. It cuts both ways. When we are defending ourselves in any situation, we are at the effect of that sword. Regardless of whether you win the battle, you still went through the battle and you suffered. So when we find ourselves wanting to, hold tight to a position and an opinion, we are in a position of suffering, and we are trying here to open our minds to a different experience and not to suffer. And so what the Course would teach us is, rather than jumping into the battlefield, recognition of the uncomfortable feeling or the charge is the first step. It's like, without awareness you can't make a change. So we have to recognize when we are tempted to jump into a position, that we, rather than jump into that position and defend a position, rather take another standpoint and view the battle from above the battleground. Let's lift ourselves up from the situation and view it from an entire different place. Rather than being on the battleground, let's lift ourselves up above the battleground and look down at what's happening. Well, what's happening is people take on positions, including ourselves, to define ourselves once again as something that we're not. In other words, if I'm for this or against that, that defines me as a person and my values. But me as a person and my values has nothing to do with what God has created me as. I am not, in the eyes of God, a separate person. I am whole. And like God, everything is a reflection of who I am. Therefore, if I hold a position or a viewpoint, that viewpoint or position only serves to define me as separate than you. So when I engage in opposing your position, I get this experience of feeling separate from you, and I get this experience of righteousness. And that is an ego attraction. That experience is for the ego. It is to sustain this experience of righteousness and separateness from you. The Course in Miracles says, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? You can't have both of them. The ego wants to be right, but we want to be happy. So the invitation is to step outside of the situation by first recognizing what we're getting into. Oftentimes when I'm scrolling through that Facebook page, I see something that just blows my mind. I'm like, wait, no, that's not the case. That's not true. And I have to, in all honesty, say that sometimes I do respond, but then there's this moment of, oh, why did I jump into that battlefield? What am I trying to do? Change someone else's mind? The healing is not in changing other people's mind. The healing is in changing my mind. Seek not to change the world. Seek to change our mind about the world, is what the Course would say. So let me read you a quote here from the Course that helps me remember to lift myself above the battleground. It says, be lifted up and from a higher place look down upon it. From there, your perspective will be quite different. Here, in the midst of it, it does seem real. When you are in the midst of the battle, when you're arguing, when you're trying to prove a point, you are in the battle. You are in opposition to someone else, to an idea. And in this COVID-19, there's so much opportunity to get caught up in it. Should we go out? Should we stay in? Are there too many rules? Not enough rules? Is it safe? Is it not safe? This is better. This doesn't work. So and so's behind it. Was it in China? Did it originate in a lab? You see, so the floodgates are open to engage in the battle. And when you're in the battle, you are at the effect of what's happening. You're at the effect of the stones being thrown as you throw stones too. The invitation is to rise above the battleground, which is to say, we cannot deny that we have these feelings. We cannot deny that the battle seems to be taking place, but we can watch it without judgment, which is another simple definition of forgiveness. The invitation is to watch the battlefield, is to watch the situation without judgment. To forgive is to watch without judgment. You see, it's the judgment that causes suffering. It is the for or against that puts us in a position of feeling separate from our brothers and sisters. And if our aim is peace of mind, then we have to adopt a way of seeing the world that isn't for or against anything but peace, for peace and only peace. That is the sight in which Jesus saw the world. That's why Jesus was capable and able of seeing everyone as the Christ, because he did not judge against anyone, and he did not judge against behavior either. All was whole in the eyes of Jesus. His capacity to create miracles was based on the fact that he did not see the problems. When someone was sick, he did not see the sickness. He was so convicted in his vision of them as the Christ, whole and complete, so strongly that they could not even see themselves as sick. Hence the perception switch from fear to love. Hence the perception switch from sickness to health. So if our aim is peace, then we need to get out of the battlefield. And in removing ourselves from that, we can be convicted in this idea that what we see is a misperception. What we see of ourselves and what we see of others is a misperception, and we become willing to see it differently, which now opens our mind to a miracle, to be able to see it differently, to see it from above the battleground. From inside the battleground, it seems very real. Here, you've chosen to be part of it. Here, murder is your choice. Yet from above, the choice is miracles instead of murder. And the perspective coming from this choice allows you, the battle is not real, and easily escape. Bodies may battle, but the clash of forms is meaningless. This is all meaningless. Where it comes from, who gave it to who, whose fault it is, who's going out, who's not going, all of that is meaningless. It is meaningless to a mind that wants nothing but peace. And it is over when you realize it never was begun. And I know that's hard to accept. What do you mean it's never begun? I see it everywhere. I see it on the news. I see it in everything that I'm reading and so forth. We are here the invitation here is to see ourselves differently than what we've trained ourselves to see ourselves and the world as. But in order to do that, we have to be willing to give up the way we see the world and understand that the current way that we're seeing it is not giving us peace. So in order to see that it had never begun, we have to first let go of the way that we're already seeing it. How can a battle be perceived as nothingness when you engage in it? In other words, if you want to see the nothingness of all the chaos, you cannot do so from engaging in the battle. As long as you're out there pushing and fighting, you're not going to be able to have or see it from the standpoint of what is truth. And the truth really is that all of that chaos is really an invitation to go deeper into our spiritual practice, to be convicted in the truth of our true identity as eternal, all-loving, whole, and complete as we share as we share these attributes with our Creator. How can the truth of miracles be recognized if murder is your choice? You can't. You cannot recognize miracles. So we watch without judgment, and we consciously invite a different perspective. We are open to the Holy Spirit's perspective, the Holy Spirit being in us, the Holy Spirit being us, a part of us that can see differently, that sees with spiritual vision, not people vision. And much of this fear that is expressed through all these conflicting views, these opposing views, these battles, in the midst of COVID-19 really stems from a fear of what's uncertain. Which brings me to the third point that I've had to kind of deal with, as we are all dealing with in this COVID-19, and that is the fear of uncertainty. In my experience, I had certainly over the last couple of years, been working on a business. I have a retail store in Honoka'a, an online store, koawoodranch.com. Here's a commercial plug. And I certainly had a lot of plans for the store and the business prior to this whole COVID-19 situation. Now, needless to say, with the situation turning out as it turns out, the store has not had any sales. My vision for what I wanted to do at this point with it is completely out the window. I have no clue when tourism is going to bounce back for people to be able to shop the store. Talk about uncertainty. I mean, some people are predicting we won't get tourism back in Hawaii till the end of 2021. And even then it won't be back to like it was, which my business depends on. The store depends on a lot of tourist business. So there is a lot of uncertainty. There's certainly a lot of investment that's put into it, both time and financial. And so this is common. A lot of people have made a lot of investments of time and money, emotional, mental, and a lot of plans. Of Course in Miracles says planning is a defense against God. And the reason why it says that is because the truth is we suffer when our plans fall apart. We fall in love with our ideas of the future because we look to the future as a future happiness. We look to the future with future goals. And a lot of these future goals or future plans, future ideas have literally collapsed into a place of uncertainty. And that is very difficult because the ego's thought system is built on ideas and thoughts. The ego has no independent existence. It's not real. The stories we tell ourselves are not real, but we believe them with high conviction. And so we believe in the future with a high level of conviction of what the future can bring us, what we hope for. And that is, in a COVID world, collapse. It's ended. It's done. There is no certainty. But the truth is, there was never a certainty. God doesn't live in the future. That's why planning is a defense against God, because it is a defense against where God exists, which is here. Our capacity to see God is missed because of our future planning. We trust more in our small perspectives. We trust more in our planning than the reality of this moment, of God in this moment. We can't see God because we're so caught up in our stories. That's why meditation in many cases is very helpful, because we stop. We allow for a moment to be here and now. And what that offers us is, even if for a fraction, offers us an escape from mental thinking. And at first, from an ego's perspective, the moment looks like it offers nothing. But in truth, it offers no thing. It is true. But there's freedom and peace in that. There's a sense of okayness that is experienced and vastly overlooked. Sense of okayness. You see, we're so afraid of the uncertainty, we fail to recognize a sense of peace and okayness that exists for us right now. And if we're really honest with ourselves and we look back at our experiences in life, and many of us, regardless of how old you are, how many years you've lived, we've all experienced different things. I know in my experience, I've experienced everything from financial hardship to death to sickness to loss, great loss, plans crushed. We've all had breakups, relationships, heartache, family disputes. But if we look back in every one of those cases, we will find that we've made it through to the other side. Okay, we are okay. Even in situations where we thought, oh, I'll never get through this. I'll never survive after this. I can't get past this relationship. I can't get past that. I missed this opportunity. Well, guess what? You got past it, and you will get past this too. We forget that we are here, we are okay. We forget and overlook the gift of this joining, my message, this message, our message that we listen to. This invitation is a testament. It is a reminder. It is a sign from the truth of who you are, reaching out to say, hey, we're good. We're okay. We're good. Yes, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Yes, we are uncertain. Can we be with the uncertainty right now and still be okay? Yes. Can we watch our plans, what's unfolding, without judgment? Can we overlook what we see in our minds, the stories in the world? That is forgiveness. The capacity to overlook, to watch without judgment, puts us in a position to not be in the effect, not be at the effect of what we see. And in that practice, with all these thinkings, whether we're talking about the thought of, ooh, I wasted time, I'm wasting time, I'm not worthy. The thought of, ooh, I disagree with this person, I want to fight, I want to set my viewpoint ahead of everything. My viewpoint's the right, I want to be right. To the uncertainty. Can I watch all of that without judgment? Therein lies the portal to complete peace. Therein lies the invitation. Therein lies the essence and the heart of this teaching, is watch without judgment. The fourth thing, talked about wasting time. I talked about the battlefield. I talked about uncertainty. And the fourth thing, the last thing that I'll talk about in the midst of this COVID world, is really the fear of death. That is really the fuel for all of this. The fear of death. And the fear of death cannot be underestimated. It is very deeply rooted in our minds. It is a fear of non-existence. But here's the deal, is because we are extensions of our creator, we share in our creator's attribute of eternity. But it's not in the form that we think we are. It's not going to be in the form of the body. The body will die. We know that. But we are not the body. And that is hard to see because we've been so conditioned throughout our lives from infancy with the names we've been given, from the roles we've played out. We've been taught wrongly, the Course would say, that we are people and that we are people in roles. It is not to deny that that's what we see and experience. Sure, we have names, we have functions, we have roles, but that's just on the surface of this perspective. That's just from the standpoint of being in this world. But at a much deeper level, which is where we're trying to get to, we're trying to change our standpoint from this mortal experience to a much deeper spiritual experience, which is really the essence of all spiritual awakening. It is the whole point of doing any spiritual work, is to get to a standpoint in which we can see the world differently and be convicted of what we know is ultimately true. And from that perspective, there is no death. People die, the spirit doesn't. And in my study of A Course in Miracles, as I'm sure in the study of many spiritual teachings, this is the experience and the perspective that is offered you through the application of principles of forgiveness. It is the teaching of Jesus. It is the teaching of many spiritual gurus and sages in their own way. This idea that the world is a dream, the world is Maya. But to say it is not enough. To actually understand that is not enough. The invitation is to the experiential understanding, to generalize the lesson. And that requires the ability to remove the blocks to love's awareness. The presence of love in our experience right now. The awareness of love in this experience right now. The wholeness of it. That comes as the ego's thought system collapses. And the COVID-19 experience, or what's happening in this world, is an invitation. It is an invitation to use it for the purpose of forgiveness. And if you're still wondering, well, how do I use it? How do I use it and make it the purpose of it? Well, every time you have a fear thought, every time you have a thought that is uncomfortable, every time you have a conscious awareness of a fear, that is the moment where you recognize, oh, there's an ego thought. I don't need to change it. I just need to be willing to look at it. And, as Byron Katie would say, is it true? Is it true? Really going deep with that question. Being willing to see it in a way that it isn't true. Be willing to open up our minds to a different way of seeing. And in that pursuit, do we find peace, joy, and happiness? So I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you forgiveness in a COVID world. I have complete faith that what has been going on will soon be over. In fact, I would argue that it is over. And I will see you all on the other side. I am with you all. And I want to thank the New Thought Center of Kona for inviting me to share with you a little bit on A Course in Miracles. And I also want to take a moment to say that the New Thought Center, Kona of Hawaii, is not having live services, and as a result, the result of not having live services, they can't pass away that infamous, that famous, not infamous, but famous koa bowl that I adore. You know, I have a koa wood ranch store, sell koa bowls and stuff like that. So that koa bowl that goes around, that we all get to donate. And so I'm inviting you to please check out their links and donate. They don't have the donations coming in from the live service, and they surely can use your donations. And those donations help bring other speakers and teachers to share more about these principles of peace, love, and happiness. So follow the link, give a donation. Thank you to the New Thought Center of Hawaii. I appreciate this opportunity. Sending everyone lots of love. And if you want to join me on Facebook or Instagram, at Peace Peddler on Instagram, and on Facebook, you can find me, Craig Villarrubia. Much love to you all, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.